versus Goliath, right? Like they're pointing to a Bible story. Like every time they make that analogy, and it's become synonymous with underdog stories. And it's just funny how these underdog stories resonate with us. Like there's countless movies, books, articles, like we celebrate when the underdog wins. There's something about it that captures our hearts. When somehow, despite every expectation, despite doubters, despite statistical odds, despite being overmatched, when the underdog somehow comes away with the win, we're all like, that's amazing. And we get excited about it. You don't even have to be rooting for a team that's an underdog, and you hear the story and you're like, I love that. Why is that? And I think part of the reason these stories resonate with us is because we're reminded in every one of those stories, starting with David and Goliath, that unlikely victories do happen. That it's possible to defy the odds. And that simple observation, well, that gives us reason to hope. Like, no matter what you're facing, no matter what you're up against, no matter what the odds are, there's never a point where there's not hope. That's what the underdog story reminds us of. Like they had no business winning, but guess what they just did? They won. And that something in that stirs our hearts. It can be done. It's not guaranteed defeat. There's hope. So here's what we're going to do over the next 4 Sundays. 4 Sundays we're going to take. And we're going to be in the story of David and Goliath. We're going to look specifically at our faith in the drama of facing giants. We're going to see in the story relevant details for our lives, especially related to our faith when we feel hopeless. And I do want to say this. So the inspiration of this story, this came to me a number of years ago. I read a book by a guy named Louis Giglio. And the book is called Goliath Must Fall. And the subtitle is this: it's Winning the Battle Against Your Giants. And I remember I had read that book, and I remember thinking, whoa, there's so much more there than I ever acted like there was. And so I found it, like this is something that stirred my heart, and I'm like, oh, we're preaching that. Like we're going to take some extended weeks, and we're going to do this. And so I'm so excited to get to do this and to unpack this, well, a children's story, right? And we've relegated this basically to a children's story. This is one we tell you in Sunday school, but we don't talk about much as adults. And it's time for us to see some of what David and Goliath has to offer us as adults. And so over the next few weeks, I hope we can breathe in some of the hope that this story inspires. As we look closer at it, we're going to get to see some different angles of the story. We're going to see things like the spiritual battle, the struggle of fear, the loss of hope, dealing with doubt and dealing with doubters, and how you see things, your perspective, and what we do when our faith wobbles or when we have to wrestle in faith. So there's a lot for us to take in this story. You'll find the story of David and Goliath in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And so as you start out the beginning of the chapter, here's what it says. This is the beginning of the story. The Philistines mustered their army for battle and camped between Soko and Judah and Azekah at Ephes-dammim. Saul countered by gathering his Israelite troops near the valley of Elah. So verse 3 says this: so the Philistines and Israelites faced each other on opposite hills with the valley in between them. So the Israelites are at war with the Philistines. They're currently at a standoff. They each have their armies on opposite hills, and there's a valley in between them. So here's the first thing I want you to kind of let sink in. as you imagine this, because sometimes we don't catch like the real life parts of this, but we're all about to go to war. And we're just waiting for it to start. Or maybe another way to put it is, you do realize war doesn't have a kickoff time. And you don't take a break at some point and say, hey, we'll come back and we'll meet and fight later. Like, war starts when somebody starts it. And so as they're sitting on the hills, like one army is waiting for the other to make the move, or we're going to make the move. That's how this is going to go. And once one of the armies makes a move, then the battle is on until it's done. Hours, days, weeks, months, years. Like once that battle starts, it's going to go. And so if one army starts lining up on the hill, well, the other army needs to be ready, and so they start lining up on the hill. Because if you don't line up and they start rushing into the valley like you weren't ready, the last thing you want in battle is to not be ready. And so I want us to kind of get the picture as these armies are staged opposite each other. And so what would they be doing? I mean, they're making their battle plans, right? They're making preparations for a battle that could erupt at any time. So the tension would be thick. Like, it could be imminent. Any day you wake up, this day might be the day one of the armies rushes into the valley. And so you would imagine then that they're going over strategies, anticipating what the enemy might do and how we would respond to that, or if we could get to this position there, then we would have an advantage. And so you're looking through your options, your goals, your objectives, you're anticipating what the enemy is going to do, but all the while you live with the tension of, we're about to go to war. And so they're preparing themselves to be ready at a moment's notice. So in that, keep this in mind as well. One of the harsh realities of war is this. When it starts, there will be a lot of wounded and a lot of people who die. So the tension is, the moment somebody rushes into the valley, here's what both armies know. There's going to be bloodshed and death. Like that's tense. And here's the other thing, like the moment that battle starts, some will die immediately. Like before they ever had a chance to fight. And all of this is to say, I want you to feel the weight of the battle that everybody's anticipating. And then in the middle of that tension, out marches a Philistine soldier. And he's been nominated to be their, we'll call it a spokesman. He's been nominated to be their spokesman, and he's not just any soldier that steps out of the ranks. In fact, when you read the description, you realize he didn't really need to step out of the ranks for everybody to see him. Like, the guy is freakishly scary huge. And just the sight of him instantly leaves an impression. He's immediately terrifying. Verse 4, we read this. Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. I want you to notice the words of Philistine champion. So this means he's not just a prop. He's not just for intimidation. The guy is a proven warrior. When my older son was in 8th grade, he played on a travel basketball team. And they had a kid on their team who was 6'6". He's an 8th grader. And so we would walk into the gym, and I'm not kidding you, like our team would walk in and the kid is a head above everybody else on our team and theirs. And we'd walk into the gym and everybody, I mean, the refs would stop and look, the parents would stop and look, the other team, the other coaches, and they'd all just be like, no way that's an 8th grader. There's just no way. And so we like had this fun advantage of walking in with the 6'6" 8th grader and everybody's jaws drop. Until you watched him play. Like he was great for walking in the gym and getting that initial jaw drop. But when the game started, they're like, oh yeah, he's an 8th grader. Like here was a kid who clearly had not grown into his limbs yet. Like he tripped over his own feet. He would have foul trouble in minutes, and he really made no impact on the game. He was just great for intimidation in warm-ups. But he was never anything remotely close to an all-star. He was gangly and awkward and uncoordinated, and he was never going to beat you. See, Goliath, he was a champion. He was not just the guy that walked in the room and everybody's jaw drops, but he's the one who has proven again and again that he is lethal and he's a champion. He's not just a big, awkward, lumbering guy for intimidation. So listen to the description of Goliath, and you've heard this before, but here's the description. He's over 9 feet tall. Like that's just hard to fathom. You guys have seen pictures of Shaquille O'Neal? He's 7'2", and you watch see a normal person next to him, and you're like he could squash that person. And so Goliath is 2 feet beyond that. Like that's monstrous. So he's 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet, and his bronze coat of mail weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leg armor, and he carried a bronze javelin on his shoulder. The shaft of his spear was as heavy and thick as a weaver beam, tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed 15 pounds. Goliath stood and shouted a taunt across to the Israelites. "Why are you all coming out to fight?" he called. "I'm the Philistine champion, but you are only the servants of Saul. Choose one man to come down here and fight me. If he kills me, then we'll be your slaves. But if I kill him, well, then you'll be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel today. Send me a man who will fight me." So he's the champion warrior. He's over 9 feet tall. He has this huge coat of armor that weighs over 125 pounds. One of the things I want you to note here when you hear about his armor, like his armor is bigger and thicker than the average person can wear, which means he's better protected, which means it's going to take more than an average blow to penetrate. So he's got this spear with a tip that weighs 15 pounds. Have you picked up a bowling ball? Like that's the end of his spear, a cannonball basically. Like even without the point, if he hits you with it, you're gonna be in trouble, right? But it's a spear. So here's the picture, is he's bigger, he's stronger, he's better protected, and he's got better weapons than what you've got. Who wants to fight him? And immediately, everyone in both armies, they know there's no one who's going to stand up toe-to-toe with Goliath and win the battle. But Goliath, he's the spokesperson, and he throws out this great idea. Like, why does there have to be a lot of bloodshed today? We don't have to do it like this. Look, there's a lot of men on both hills. A lot of men could be wounded and dying. That's not necessary. Let's just do one man to represent each army. One valiant warrior versus another. So you pick one of your best guys. We'll pick one of our best guys. That's me. And then winner takes all. We'll fight and that's it. Not a lot of bloodshed. So who wants to fight? And then I want you to imagine the mocking laugh. And the reason I want you to imagine that, because you're going to see he's not just challenging, he's taunting. He knows no one wants to fight him. So he's calling for a brave warrior to step up to the challenge, which of course nobody does, and he knew they wouldn't. The Philistines knew they wouldn't. And I want you to notice now that he is not just challenging, he's mocking and taunting. And what he has done is he has forced the whole Israelite army into a crisis. They're presented with the challenge that nobody believed they could win, not the Israelites, not the Philistines. And the fact that Goliath would be the victor, well, that was a foregone conclusion. It was only a matter of choosing which poor sap would die in the battle. So when Saul and the Israelites heard this, they were terrified and deeply shaken. So when you're terrified, you are gripped by fear. It's all you can see. Deeply shaken means your confidence is shattered. Your faith is gone. All hope and all fight have drained out of them. They're terrified and deeply shaken. So here's what we read in verse 16. For 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistine champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. When you read the word strutted, what comes to mind? Right? Like total arrogance, completely cocky, utterly defiant, just showing off. Marching around with such arrogant certainty that he is 100% in control and there is nothing anybody is going to do to change that. And here's what I want you to notice in verse 16, that the taunt that he throws out is the good morning and good night to the Israelites every single day. Twice every day for over a month, 40 days, he struts out to taunt the Israelites. So picture your morning routine. You know, whatever it is for them, they come out of their tents. We'll use our morning routine. They brush their teeth. They get their coffee going. Right? But they come out of their tent and everybody knows while they're making their coffee that the giant's going to come. And he's going to issue his daily morning taunt. Like that's what you wake up to. And so what's interesting is every morning they line up like warriors ready for battle. They line up on the hill like they're ready to go to war, army facing army, and then Goliath does his thing. He steps up, issues his daily challenge / insult. Are there any brave warriors on the hill today? Anybody up for the challenge? And the Israelites would sit silent, terrified and shaken. So Goliath, right, you can just imagine, I'll take your silence as no brave warriors today. But think about this. If this is your daily routine, what does this do to you? Like, just think body language for a moment. What is the defeated body language? It's the shoulders slumped. It's the head down, the eyes down. And so it's this strange setting where they're lined up like warriors, right? But frightened like children. And on the other side, the Philistine side, well, they're relaxed. They're mocking and laughing at the frightened army on the other hill. And that's the good morning. And at night, he comes back to do it again. Something to take to bed with them. Just checking back with you today to see if any courageous warriors showed up. Guess not. Okay, mighty warriors, we'll see you in the morning. And we're going to do it again. So Goliath becomes this daily voice, reinforcing the belief that there's no hope, that there can be no victory. It's a relentless voice of hopelessness. For 40 days, he struts out, taunting, mocking, defying, and nobody's going to face him. So there comes a point in those 40 days, and probably sooner in those 40 days than later, where there's more going on than just fear. It becomes humiliation and shame. It spirals into hopelessness and despair. So 40 times, twice a day, so 80 times now, they've heard the taunt. And 80 times, nobody will respond, and Goliath has completely taken the fight out of them. He has been arrogant and unrelenting, bringing them face to face with their fear twice a day, every day. Keeping it fresh, strengthening its grip, until despair is all they see. So you would imagine, right? If you're on the Israelite hill, you're all sick of this, right? Like, we're tired of hearing the giant taunt. It's a miserable way to live. If you have lived in your life for any period or season with feelings of hopelessness, you know the weight of that. And so you can imagine you want to do something. Like, somebody's got to do something, but you feel like there are no options. There's no way to win. There had to be some men who had some brave moments, like, that's it, I'll go fight him. Like, I'll do it. Except, like, everything's on the line for everybody. So if you go out there and get killed, well, guess what? Everybody else gets to be slaves. So you can't just send anyone out to fight him. And every day Goliath mocks. Every day there's no response. Every day everyone on that hill becomes more convinced that the giant cannot be defeated and he cannot be silenced. So let's just pull this into life real quick. We have all known this feeling at one time or another. When fear and anxiety are overwhelming. When discouragement and despair become the dominant filter. When you struggle to see your circumstances through anything but discouragement. Like, can you in any way relate to the Israelite army as they deal with the voice of Goliath every day, reinforcing their discouragement and despair? Have you ever lived where you wake up and there's that voice? And as you fall asleep, there's that voice. You've probably noticed this as you faced whatever challenges, those giants in your life, that they never just show up and go away, do they? They keep coming back day after day, multiple times a day, relentlessly yelling at you across the valley of your life in hopes of talking you into defeat or out of a fight. The message of the giant is there's no way you can win. It's not possible. So why even bother? And that relentless message chips away at your faith, increases your fear, stokes despair. And just like the Israelite army, sometimes there's a lot on the line. So not only is there the giant, but it's a giant you can't afford to lose to, but you also don't see any way to win. So what do? And the mocking then continues, these daily taunts of intimidation, and you feel helpless because you don't have an answer. Is there a giant in your life right now? Or in somebody's life that you know? A habit or an addiction? Some overwhelming feelings like anger, discouragement, loneliness, anxiety, guilt, shame? Relational chaos or dysfunction? Resentment or unforgiveness? Fear that runs amok in your life? Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being in control, fear of being found out, you name your fear. wounds that seem to never heal. Like, this is just a small sampling of the battles that we can face, the giants that we are up against, and we all have it at times. In fact, I would dare say that when we ask the question, what's your giant? There's at least a few of you in the room know right away what it is. Maybe there's a situation, a giant that has been shouting from a hill in your life for a long time now. You've tried to face it, you've tried to deal with it, but it's still there, unflinching, arrogant, mocking. No sign that it's going away. So what I want you to notice about the Israelites, for the Israelites, Goliath had become a part of the daily routine. Which means this: after the 40 days of mocking and listening to the taunts, it had become expected, normal. So like at first when Goliath would step out, it was shocking, right? Who does he think he is? But eventually it's no longer shocking. It's normal. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you make your coffee, and then the giant taunts you. And you get ready for bed, you get settled in, but first the giant's going to taunt you. And it becomes normal. Have you been there? Where you're facing something in your life, and the voice of discouragement or despair becomes normal? It's no longer shocking that you're hearing it. In fact, it's expected. And that daily impact, it takes a toll, especially when we're trying to handle things in our own strength. So part of the challenge with Goliath and other situations that we face is that there's a truth that's there. So it was true that man to man, Goliath was likely not going to be defeated. He was bigger and stronger and better protected. He was the proven warrior. So if I'm on my own, I'm not going to win. So there's some truth to that. But that doesn't mean a battle shouldn't be fought. And we're going to talk over the next couple weeks, because it's the story of David and Goliath, about God's part in that battle. We'll get to that. But here's something I want to leave us with today related to Goliath's challenge. Do you realize nobody had to accept the giant's terms? So he created a scenario where, listen, you choose one warrior, we'll fight, me and him. Whoever wins, wins. But you don't have to accept the terms. You don't have to go one-on-one with the giant. In fact, think about this. If you're battle planning and you're looking out over the ranks and you see the 9-foot-tall guy, you're planning to deal with that. You're looking out and saying, okay, so we're going to send 30 guys that way. Like, he may be big, he may be strong, but I don't think he can handle 30. 30 not enough? Okay, let's do 50. But you're not going to say, hey, Joe, you want to take a shot at the giant? Like, you're going to battle plan, and it never was going to be a one-on-one plan, was it? But somehow Goliath creates these terms where the only way we can do this is for one of you to fight me. Why did they accept Goliath's terms? Or let's bring it home into the room. Why do we in our lives accept the terms of the enemy? Specifically and consistently in spiritual warfare, here are one of the terms of the enemy. You got to go alone. Can't tell anybody about that. Oh, you can't let anybody into that mess. Oh no, you know they think of you if you brought somebody into that. No. You got to do this alone. Oh, you think God's got your back? I don't know if he's going to show up for that one. I mean, you know what you did, right? Like, can you picture the dialogue? So the giant creates the terms where your only option is to go alone. which is always a nearer option to defeat than victory. Why do we accept the terms? So you can trust God to show up. It may not look exactly what you were envisioning, but you can trust God to be present and to show up. And here's the thing. You can also invite others into the battle with you. Don't face the giant one-on-one. Let people in. Don't let the giant set the terms. But despair is crippling. It's funny like that. Like once you take hope out, we struggle to even consider options and possibilities. And defeat becomes the only thing we see. And so here's kind of the big idea for today. Do you understand at this point, we haven't gotten to David showing up on the scene, but to this point, a whole army is defeated without a fight. Because they had this deeply held belief that Goliath cannot be defeated. And that belief led to a loss of faith and hope, and an increase in fear and anxiety. And Goliath then reinforces that for them every single day, twice a day, until they not only believe that the giant can't be defeated, but they begin to live by that truth or that belief that the giant can't be defeated. And I want us to know at the beginning of this series, this is one of the great strategies in spiritual warfare. The strategy of the enemy is to taunt and mock and work hard to establish in you a mindset of defeat. To convince you that you can't win. That there is no option where you come out and win. It's a relentless voice that says, you don't have a chance. You know you've got no answers for this in your life. And so Goliath reinforced this belief for the Israelite army every day that they couldn't win. And they believed it, surrendered to it, and lived by it. Until it becomes like cement. The mindset of defeat. And they can't see anything else. There is a spiritual battle being waged around us. You know this. It touches your life at different times. You also know that you don't get to opt into the battle. Like you're in it, whether you want to be or not. But I do want to remind us of this today, that for the enemy, the easiest battle for the enemy to win is the one you never fight. Like if he can convince you that there's no hope, that there's no chance, that you just need to live with this voice of mocking every day and that's all you can do, because the enemy knows that what you think and believe matters. So one, you don't have to accept the terms of the enemy. You don't have to fight alone. You invite God into it. Don't stop praying. Don't stop persevering. Continue to, here's the image from Scripture, lift your eyes up to the mountains. Lifting your eyes up is a position of hope. Eyes down is defeat. So continue to lift your eyes up where your help comes from. The enemy always prefers head down, fight alone. 2, you don't have to accept the enemy's truth. And the enemy's truth that he wants you to have is this: there is no reason to fight because there's no chance to win. So you don't need to bother. There is a battle to be fought, but not on your own. The enemy would love nothing more than you to stay on the hill, cowering in fear. And here's why. Because he knows the giant can be defeated. So as long as I can convince you to stay on the hill, that's the giant's best shot. That for all the strength and size and intimidation that Goliath brings, he's nothing when God's in the battle. The truth is this: the giants in your life are real. And yes, you may not be able to win on your own, but you're not left on your own. God will never leave you or forsake you, and you can invite other people in to the battle with you. And the fact that you don't have to do it alone, you'll see coming up, this is precisely David's perspective when he stepped into the fight. For him, it was like, well, I'm not doing this alone. God's going to help me. And so we're going to talk about this over the next few weeks. What I want to do today is this. I want to close us in a song. It's Lord, I Need You. I think you're familiar with this. I know the choir's done it. Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. And then there's this chorus that you keep coming back to that declares, Lord, I need you. Oh, man, I need you. Every hour, I need you. As my defense and my righteousness, God, I need you. So we're going to sing this together. Wait a second. I have a pick in here that will help. There we go. Lord, I come. Lord, I come. I confess. Bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Let's sing Where You Are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, you're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Lord, we do need you. You know how susceptible we are to the taunting voice of the enemy. How easy it is to hit despair and not see options, to surrender to the terms of the enemy, to go it alone, to neglect any perspective of faith that anticipates what you might do. Lord, we need you. Thank you for this story that many of us have relegated as a children's story, but today we begin to see that there's some significant stuff for us in our adult lives. I pray that over the next couple of weeks that you would continue to pour into our hearts a new perspective, a new way of going about faith and facing the battles that are before us in our lives. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.